Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Luxxfolio's channel. Glad that you are all joining us here today. We're, of course, sitting here again with Dean, who is no longer in the title of CEO. Now you are the founder. So, Dean, tell us about the title change and tell us about the winds of change coming to Luxxfolio.
Well, I think first of all, as we've talked before, 2021 was a remarkable year for Lux. We closed out the year with about a $10 million financing, which was a significant milestone for the company, and it really marked the end of the incubation process of Lux. And with that, it really sort of marked the end of my mission as well as CEO. Along the way, you'll recall we acquired West Block, and with it we acquired a very seasoned management team in the form of Ken, Jason, and Kian, and those guys are really running the show. I'm obviously a very interested observer in that, and excited to kind of share with people sort of the accomplishments and the advancement that is taking place in Luxxfolio. But there was really my time is better spent, I think, at this point in time, focused back on the mothership over at Cypress Hills Partners and the exciting things that are going to be happening there. As well as lending a hand when and where I can at Luxxfolio. So I'm not old enough quite yet, or not tired enough yet to be retired, but one step closer, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note to people that this is business as usual in a positive way in terms of how corporate structures typically work. It's typically someone who helps get the project legs, and hey, it got there. It's also important to keep in mind, not every project people incubate actually makes it to the point where it's a living, breathing machine on its own, right? Now,
yeah, that's a very good point. I think being able to finish off that financing the way we did, and then amongst the turbulence that was sort of taking place at the time and continues today, is a huge accomplishment, and we're all super proud of what we've accomplished at Luxxfolio. And I think that we're super interested to see what 2022 brings, because we're starting off with all of our ducks in a row. Notwithstanding the volatility with Bitcoin, people need to remember we stack Bitcoin at the same rate, whether it's 30,000 or 90,000. The good news is we don't have to sell Bitcoin in order to finance our operations. So that's an important differentiation between us and a lot of groups that maybe hadn't had the good fortune of pulling the trigger on a financing like we did.
Yeah, that's a good point. So also, just to shift gears a little bit, tell me about your guys' hash rate. And when we're talking about hash, we're unfortunately not talking about hash browns. We're talking about the rate you're actually able to turn these around and actually acquire more cryptocurrency, whether it be Bitcoin, Ethereum, or so on. Tell us where the hash rate's sitting now and how you guys got it there.
I think we announced this week that we're 138, and trending significantly higher by mid-year. And I think that we've talked a lot about the schedule of rigs that we've got on the way. Those seem to be on time and route. We're currently building out more power at our New Mexico facility, and as well, I know that Ken and Kian are working on seeing things every day. It's interesting with this downturn in Bitcoin. I think that for a group like ours, there's a lot of opportunity that springs from that, because suddenly you're seeing groups that can really stand to go public, that otherwise may have been a little bit standoffish about the idea. So I'm optimistic about 2022, not in spite of Bitcoin prices, but because of it, and because we've put ourselves in a really good, strong financial position for the time being.
Yeah, and I think people need to come to understand, and I get with every new era of crypto, and it seems like it's a new era every year practically. With every new era, you have a lot of people who are wet behind the ears, but this volatility is 100% normal. This is par for the course for everything crypto related. It's a very volatile market. Things go up, crazy fast. Things come down crazy fast, but the trend has been insanely upward for the entire time. It's insane. There's nothing.
I don't think that, there's a lot of people who are still the crypto or the Bitcoin naysayers to go, oh, see, it's not an inflation hedge at all. But I think that people need to understand that the enthusiasm that 2021 brought to Bitcoin and the normalization of it, and by normalization, I mean institutional ownership on Wall Street, people, viewing it as a technology, which they're perfectly within their rights to do. They invested, in some cases quite heavily in crypto. And when it sells off, that is a liquid asset that, they can begin to sort of, realize losses or realize gains in these downturns. But over time, as the asset matures, there's no way that it can't be a natural hedge against inflation. It's just in this cycle, it's just young enough that it was getting sold off with all the other tech stocks. It's still early days. When people say, oh, we're just in the first inning of this whole thing, for most of us, we sort of take that as a real positive, only a positive. It's just starting out. But along the way, like you said, there is going to be continued volatility for probably the next 5-10 years. But as you said, the trajectory is always up. It's always putting in higher lows.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of a hype news magnet too, unfortunately, just because of the very nature of it going way up and way down and way up. Like you'll see news articles, oh, X person took their salary in Bitcoin, now it's only worth 40% of what they had taken it for. They're stupid and all this again, back and forth. It's just because of the massive changes in numbers and the massive hype around it in general that it just kind of turns into clickbait largely, I think, is what causes a lot of focus on it when we get downturns like this.
I think one of the things that I've been particularly interested in and a little bit amazed by is this conversation around, the energy use still around Bitcoin. And I think there's a lot of people that are still, if you're still talking about that, if that's a conversation that you're saying, yeah, but Bitcoin's great. Yeah, but it's energy consumption. You really are demonstrating that you're not really that interested in Bitcoin at all, because you haven't bothered to sort of figure out what's really going on here and what it's really replacing and what it's really capable of. If you're still talking about the Bitcoin Mining Council met the other day, and one of the things that the network had gotten 9 or 10% more efficient in the last 12 months. So imagine if the airline industry came out yesterday and said, the airline industry, we're using 10% less fuel than we were, we're 10% more efficient than we were this time last year. Yeah, you would have parades in the streets. People would be going bananas. There's construction going on across the street. They're pouring concrete like it's going out of style. Imagine if the concrete industry globally said they got 10% less greenhouse gases being emitted. You would just, people would be going crazy about that. And yet, it's Bitcoin that's being talked about as being, well, what about the energy production or the energy usage of Bitcoin? It's a head scratcher. I'm just
dude, wow. You can boil things down to if somebody at their gut feeling supports it or not, and then they build up everything around it. Because if someone says, I don't like Bitcoin because of the proof of work, let's say they're somewhat knowledgeable. I don't like it because the proof of work requires too much energy and so on and so forth. It's like, okay, well, here's 15 alternatives that are purely proof of stake that do roughly the same thing. Do you like those? And then they don't like those either. So what they don't understand is just how flexible blockchain technology and crypto really is. And pretty much anything they say, it's like, hey, someone's thought of your exact argument and came up with a solution for it just as well. But you don't want to hear the solutions. You just want to say what you don't like about it, which is at the end of the day, all it is they just don't like it.
Yeah, and the solutions, it's quite amazing. The idea that we've got this technology that can curb the way we fight with one another. And when you talk, when I'm reading a lot about long-term debt cycles, and they always sort of progress through one being sort of where your money is hard, where you're dealing with gold coins and whatnot, and then the progression to stage 4, where you kind of enter into the fiat currency world, which is wonderful, but it is the beginning of the end. And sometimes the time between the beginning and the end is 50 years. And sometimes it's 100 years, sometimes it's longer, depending on the leadership that you have in the meantime. We're clearly sort of at a stage 5, stage 6 being the end of it. We're clearly in a stage 5 at this point in time. And for the first time in human history, we have a technology that helps us perhaps avoid all of the ugliness that takes place in stage 6. And it's super exciting to me that we've actually, I'm sitting here talking to you about a technology that is going to help humanity in virtually every way, whether you talk about climate, whether you talk about geopolitical, whether you talk about, equity, all of those things. I kind of want to say to people, look, rather than give money to a charity for the, for the poor, why don't you educate yourself and talk about Bitcoin and really understand what it's about? Because it's probably the best thing you can do over the next 10 years for humanity is embrace this Bitcoin network, as opposed to, giving, $20 to the food bank. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that.
You should also give the $20 to the food bank.
You should also give, to be clear, give your money to the food bank, but in addition, just learn about Bitcoin and become an advocate for it, because that's a pretty significant contribution right there.
Yeah, good point. I understand your core message. That's fair. There's
I just about shot myself in the foot there, huh?
Yeah, don't give money to food banks, people. Done. Just study Bitcoin. Dean Linden, 2022.
There you go. That's my quote. Here lies Dean Linden. Don't give money to food banks. Yeah, give money to food banks and canned goods and whatever else you have. Please do.
Agreed.
For the long term, let's work towards a future where we don't need food banks. How about that?
Very good. Very good comeback. I appreciate that.
Yeah, there we go. It took me a while to come up with that one, but
fair enough. All right, Dean. Well, thanks again for coming on, and thank you everyone for watching. Let us know what you think the markets are going to do, and if you think it's a big deal or not. I personally don't. I've seen this a million times, but Dean, thanks again for coming on, and thank you everyone for watching. Stay tuned for another video coming soon.